Good morning, everybody. I'm Yasmin Vasukin. Joe Fryer is off this morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Happy to have you with us. I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, a critical moment for world diplomacy in Eastern Europe. President Biden and U.S. allies in the middle of high-stakes talks to keep Russia from invading Ukraine. But officials warn the window of opportunity is closing.
Mr. Putin has enough military capability and enough options militarily before him that he could conduct a major military action any day now.
This as Ukraine demands answers from Russia over that massive buildup of Russian troops at the border. We have team coverage this morning. Reopened traffic from the U.S. into Canada moving once again after a week-long trucker protest shut down a major crossing, hitting the auto industry hard. We're at the border as the trucks get rolling again. Cleared to compete, breaking overnight a controversial decision for one of the Olympics' biggest events. 15-year-old Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva now allowed to skate in the individual competition after testing positive for a banned substance. Plus, history for Team USA as Erin Jackson becomes the first black woman to win a gold in speed skating. She will join us live on Morning News Now. And California Love, a star-studded Super Bowl with a Hollywood ending for the home team. This morning, the Los Angeles Rams waking up Super Bowl champions. And of course, the Super Bowl wasn't just about the game. We're talking about the halftime show, of course, featuring some of the greatest names in hip-hop. And I don't know about you, but I feel like the combination of the day after the Super Bowl and Valentine's Day, like this should be an official holiday or something.
Oh, my God, the best ever. I mean, that halftime show, by the way, which I know we're going to get into throughout the show, was the best. I was sitting there explaining it to my 5-year-old how incredible it was. No, this is Dre. This is Snoop Dogg. He was an incredible rapper, now a producer. It was so cool.
So cool. The set was amazing. The dancers, everything.
And Mary J.
Yeah, oh, my gosh.
Beyond.
And her look. Oh, my goodness.
Anyway.
All right, we'll get into that even more than we just did a little bit later. We begin, though, this morning with breaking news.
A crucial trade route between the U.S. and Canada is open again after police broke up a week-long protest over vaccine mandates overnight. Demonstrators had blocked the Ambassador Bridge, which links Detroit to Windsor, impacting nearly $400 million of trade a day. While this particular path has been cleared, the protests again against COVID restrictions and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau continue elsewhere in Canada as well.
NBC News correspondent Cal Perry has been following this story from Windsor, Ontario. Hi, Cal. Good morning. Good to see you. So the last time that we did see you, you were in front of a bridge with gridlock traffic. What are you seeing this morning? What was it like over the weekend as well?
Yeah, so we're about a mile away from the bridge. You can see it behind me. And as you guys said, traffic is open for the first time in a week. I have to say it's a little surprising, too, after what we saw yesterday, which was this back and forth cat and mouse game. And those were the words of the police chief here, this cat and mouse game taking place between protesters and law enforcement. Really, it was a small number of protesters that were able to grind everything to a halt. And so what has happened now is the road behind me, which runs from the bridge to a major interstate that connects Canada, the police have basically made a corridor. They've put these cement barricades on all of the sort of intersections running east to west. So if you're a trucker, you get on the interstate, you come onto this road, and the next stop is to the U.S. That's what they've done to try to secure this roadway and keep it open. The mayor of the city saying that the national nightmare, the national economic nightmare is now over. Certainly that's the hope. It could be easy for protesters to come back on this road. That's why they've made the penalty 1 year in prison, $100,000 fine. They're hoping that will serve as a deterrent, guys.
Absolutely. Now, Cal, so we know that the Ambassador Bridge is open, but as Yasmin just mentioned, the demonstrations are still ongoing elsewhere in Canada, in the capital, Ottawa. What's the latest there?
Yeah, Savannah, this weekend it kind of turned into a festival-like atmosphere in Ottawa. A lot of children came, families came, but the government is calling it a quote-unquote siege. You have basically protesters that have rung the parliament. They've taken fencing down on some of the memorials. The veterans came to take fencing down on the Veterans Memorial and make it more accessible. And it has caused a political crisis really in this country and a discussion about policing in Canada. And what we saw here this week is only adding to that discussion. Are there enough resources? Does the Canadian government have what it needs to clear out that park in Ottawa? It seems clear that so far they just don't have the resources necessary to get that cleared, guys.
All right, Cal Perry, thank you so much.
All right, I want to get to the crisis now in Ukraine and what could be a defining week. Germany's chancellor is the latest leader to take a shot at diplomacy. He's in Kyiv to meet with Ukraine's President Zelensky before heading to Moscow on Tuesday for talks with Vladimir Putin. All of this after Ukraine requested a meeting with Russia within 48 hours to explain the buildup of troops on its border. And in Washington, officials sounding the alarm over a potential Russian invasion, with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan telling Face the Nation that it could be within days.
We have seen over the course of the past 10 days a dramatic acceleration in the buildup of Russian forces and the disposition of those forces in such a way that they could launch a military action essentially at any time. They could do so this coming week. But of course, it still awaits the go order. And so, therefore, we cannot predict the precise day or time that they may take action. We also are watching very carefully for the possibility that there is a pretext or a false flag operation to kick off the Russian action.
All right, let's get into this. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin joins us from Kyiv this morning, and our White House correspondent Josh Letterman is in Washington. Good morning to you both. Erin, let me start with you on this one. So the latest warning there from the United States, as we just heard, Russia calling it, though, quote unquote, hysteria. Ukraine's president saying he has seen no proof of plans to attack imminently. What does Ukraine make of the warnings right now from the White House?
Well, we heard from President Zelensky on Saturday say that the Ukrainian intelligence is different, saying that his priority at this point is to stop people from panicking, to maintain a sense of calm here in Ukraine. And to that effect, during the course of the phone conversation he had with President Biden last night, according to the Ukrainian government readout of that call, he thanked the president for his ongoing support, also inviting the president to visit Kyiv, saying that that would go a long way to de-escalate the situation. Now, of course, a visit from President Biden seems unlikely at this point, given that the United States is in the process of withdrawing the majority of its diplomatic staff from its embassy here, along with a whole host of other countries. That, in combination with KLM, a major Dutch airliner, over the weekend announcing that it was suspending flights. Fitch this morning announcing that it was downgrading the outlook for Ukrainian state banks from positive to stable, all lending to this idea among Ukrainians I've been speaking to that they feel like they're the ones being sanctioned right now, that they're paying the highest price. That being said, walking around here, Kyiv, over the weekend and this morning, it seems to be pretty much business as usual. Ukrainians I'm talking to say that they are going about their daily lives while also preparing for the worst. We've spoken to several Ukrainians who say they have moved their children out of Kyiv into the western portion of the country that's seen as safer, but they plan to remain and defend their country in the event of a potential invasion. Yasmin.
Josh, let's talk about the phone calls over the weekend. Biden speaking with both Putin and Zelensky. What do we know?
Well, the president spoke with President Putin for more than an hour on Saturday while he was at Camp David. But there are no signs that that phone conversation led to the type of de-escalation, Yasmin, that the United States and its NATO allies have been seeking, with the White House saying after that call that it was professional and substantive, but there was no fundamental change to the underlying dynamic that has characterized this conflict for the last many weeks. And the U.S. coming out of that call with President Putin saying that a military invasion by Russia could still happen at any time, that they are hoping that President Putin would take into account some of what he heard from President Biden, but officials being very candid about the fact that Russia may go ahead and invade anyway. There was also this conversation, a little bit shorter, that the president had with his Ukrainian counterpart, President Zelensky, yesterday, lasting about 50 minutes, where the president was able to fill in the Ukrainian president on what happened in that call with President Putin. Erin mentioning the fact that he invited President Biden to come to Kyiv, but the White House also saying that in this call with Zelensky, the two agreed that they would respond swiftly and decisively to any Russian aggression. Now, the president this morning will be returning from Camp David, where he had both of those calls over the weekend. By all signs, the president will be focusing on this crisis as we enter the week. He currently has nothing on his schedule other than his classified intelligence briefing today. today, Yasmin.
Erin, let's talk diplomacy here for a moment. We know Macron tried his hand at diplomacy last week. That didn't necessarily work. Germany's chancellor now trying his hand, meeting with Zelensky today, Putin tomorrow. He is new to the job, as we all know, and has been resistant to fully call out Moscow because of their oil dependency on the pipeline. What are the hopes that he can actually get something done?
You know, I think at this point, no one here is hopeful of a miracle, some sort of signed, sealed agreement that Russia will de-escalate the situation out of these meetings that he has, given the little progress that we've seen so far from the French president as well as the president of the United States. So I don't think anybody's expecting an explicit agreement out of this round of diplomacy. There is hope, though, to keep the talks going, to keep the diplomatic channels open. I think speaking to people here in the European Union, that is sort of the hope at this point. That being said, when the German chancellor comes here and arrives here in Kyiv and meets with President Zelensky, they have much to discuss. Ukrainian government officials have been very critical of Germany's response, specifically to the fact that they have declined to send lethal aid to Ukraine. German officials would make the point, though, that they've never sent lethal aid to Ukraine. Also, the topic of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, of course, will be most likely discussed in today's meetings. There's a press conference scheduled for later today. We can expect the German chancellor to be pressed on those points as well.
Josh, finally to you on this one. We know over the weekend the U.S. ordered the evacuation of the embassy there while American forces are arriving in Poland at this point. What is their main mission?
Well, their main mission is to make NATO allies feel better about what's taking place in the border with Ukraine, a non-NATO country. Although officials have also said those troops in Poland could help with Americans if they evacuate from Ukraine and enter Poland to then be processed, go through medical checks to be evacuated out of the region. Here's Pentagon spokesman John Kirby over the weekend explaining what those troops will do.
We did add just 3,000 to the remainder of the 82nd Airborne. We remember we had already deployed about 1,700 to Poland, so now 3,000 more of that airborne element will be going. They'll be going to deter any Russian aggression against Poland. They'll be going to reassure our Polish allies as well as NATO's eastern flank. And it remains an open question whether or not there'll be additional forces that need to either move inside Europe to the eastern flank or from the United States.
What they won't be doing, Yasmin, is going into Ukraine to fight Russian troops. The U.S. has made clear it does not want to get into that kind of situation. It will also not be sending in thousands of troops to evacuate Americans who decide to stay behind in Ukraine. The U.S. over the weekend repeating that message to American citizens in Ukraine to get out now on the next flight while there are still flights out of the country.
Yeah, reminding folks, the president saying in his interview with Lester Holt, we will not go to war over Ukraine. Erin, Josh, thank you both so much. Appreciate it. All right, so here in the United States, more states are choosing to drop their mask mandates, while parents now have to wait even longer to get those young kids vaccinated against COVID. In the 10 states that you see here, masks are no longer required to go inside businesses, but they're still needed for public transportation. While that may sound like we're making some progress against this pandemic, we do have a setback in the vaccine world. Pfizer has now delayed its request for the FDA to authorize the COVID vaccine for children under 5. They say they're now waiting for more data on the effectiveness of a third dose for that age group. And that data may not be available until early April, moving the goalpost again for so many parents, myself included. Here to help us understand the latest in the pandemic is NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel. Dr. Patel, thanks for joining us on this. We appreciate it. The FDA urging Pfizer to apply for an EUA with data from a 2-dose regimen. At the last second, Pfizer delayed its application, saying they needed data from a third dose. What went wrong here, and how confident are you the same things will not happen come April?
Yeah, this was disappointment heard all around the country with millions of parents who were waiting, like you, for vaccines and had our hopes kind of, promised and then dashed. Couple of things. We still don't understand what the underlying data was that convinced the FDA to put a pause on this. And obviously, that would be nice to know. But you can imagine, just given what has happened with so many pediatric cases of Omicron, especially in the last 4 weeks, you can imagine those first 2 doses just didn't hold up, and that you really do need that third dose in order to get that ever desired effectiveness that we're seeking, effectiveness against hospitalizations, against disease. That's what you kind of read between the lines, but we just don't know, and it's too soon to tell. What this means for shifting the goalpost, you're right. April is their final kind of, quote, package data due date. But if the data keeps rolling in, which it will, and there is compelling data on that third dose, then we could see action taken a little earlier. The FDA did say that they were going to make sure that they did this in a speedy manner. So one would hope, but this sets us back weeks. And you know, every week is precious as people have been holding kids out of daycare, keeping them out of schools, and trying to have a normal life in the meantime.
So, hey, Dr. Patel, it's Savannah. So I'm wondering here something kind of about vaccine hesitancy and parents and kids, because we know that the rate for children that are already eligible for the vaccine is pretty low. And we saw some stats that parents of kids under 5, there's not a lot of interest at this point in getting that shot for kids. Then we all get this push notification on our phone that Pfizer's pulling that application. What do you want parents to know who are just sort of confused by all this? They're like, I wasn't really sure I wanted to get it in the first place. Now I heard they were applying for that, and now all of a sudden they're pulling the application. If a parent's worried, what would you say to them?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Pfizer didn't really pull or withdraw its application saying we give up. It was a pause. So this is still a rolling submission that Pfizer will submit data on, working with the agency. Second, we have data on the 5 to 11 group that this has been helping them, early data that shows that it has been helping in preventing some of those bad effects from you can get Omicron, but you don't get really sick from it. That's very early data that I think will just continue to be reinforced as time goes on. Third, safety. I think the most common concern about vaccines that I've encountered with parents is safety. We have not seen any significant safety signals in the 5 and up, and reassuredly, Pfizer did put out a statement back in December that their 6-month to 24 and even to their 4-year-old, basically under 5, it's been demonstrated to be safe. It's really about that effectiveness, and getting it right with 3 doses is what I think will happen, but we need to see.
Such an important distinction there, Dr. Patel, and we appreciate you bringing that up, really talking about the efficacy here, the best way to be effective with young children versus the safety, because it's not about safety. Yep. They know the vaccine is safe. Dr. Kavita Patel, we thank you. And if you have a question, by the way, for one of our doctors, let us know. Email us at morningnewsnow@nbcuni.com with your questions. You can also let us know if you want to stay anonymous.
Now, in Los Angeles, it was all champagne and confetti last night as the Rams beat the Cincinnati Bengals to win the Super Bowl in front of their home crowd. It was the Rams' second championship, but its first since moving to L.A., capping off a thrilling season for the NFL. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joins us now from Los Angeles, up super early for us there. Hey, Shaq, good morning. So this was, even for not very sporty person, as I admit quite frequently on this show, an exciting NFL season. I mean, many of those playoff games it was incredible. Did this finale live up to the hype?
No, that's a great point, Savannah, because so many of these games during the playoffs have come down to those final few seconds, and this was no exception. It was a game of twists and turns, lots of dramatic shifts in momentum, especially when the Cincinnati Bengals were able to capture that halftime lead that the Rams went into halftime with. You know, one thing that we saw was that final drive in the fourth quarter that really locked in this Rams lead. It came down to the MVP, Cooper Kupp, who was able to get that touchdown in the end zone there. And, you know, one thing that we're also seeing is that fans here in L.A. really were looking for this. This is what they were waiting for, and this is what they were watching for. And for many of them, they said it simply didn't disappoint.
Yeah, Shaq, I know you watched the game with some Rams fans there in L.A., which sounds like a blast. What do they have to say about the victory and what it means for the city, especially for them having just moved there?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the biggest moment, of course, was that final drive. But I'll tell you, most of the people there really got excited with that halftime performance. I can't let this go without talking about that halftime show. Hip-hop greats, I hear you, Joe. The hip-hop greats really stealing the show. And that was when you heard the crowd really wake up and start paying attention to what was happening. But, of course, they were celebrating the win that they got in their home city. Listen to what they told me after that victory.
How does it feel? Oh, my God, we love LA. We're so happy. Go LA. What does this mean for the city? Oh, my God, so much. We have so much potential, so much to do. Okay, LA, get it together. We got so much to do. We're the champions. Did you expect that win? Did you expect the win to happen tonight? I expected that win. I thought that we wasn't going to win, but we won. It's LA, baby. LA Rams, baby. Yeah. The fact that
was home. It was at SoFi right down the street. Does it make it even more special?
It feels so surreal. I'm so proud of my city. I'm so proud of our team. Good job, Rams. Good job, Rams.
Savannah, in the moments after that interview, the fans there, they played "We Are the Champions" probably 5 consecutive times. They were excited. They were really having a good time. And look, they deserve it after that game that we saw.
Yeah, all right. And Shaq, if that was your night, we are doubly grateful that you're up and with us right now at 4:30 in the morning in LA. Thank you so much. Looks like fun.
You got it.
Now let's get a check on your Morning News Now weather. Bill Cairns is with us. Hey, Bill.
So impressive. It doesn't even look tired. Like the rest of us, we were up late watching the game.
I wasn't, by the way. I went to bed at 9 and then got the alert. After halftime, I went to sleep.
I had people at mine, so it was hard to be like, you know what, leave, even though we've got this final drive. Could you imagine I kicked him out right before they did that drive?
That was great. So let me get to your Monday forecast. And also, he's wearing a jacket still, and it's still like in the 60s in L.A. While the rest of us are like still stuck in winter. It was a pretty wild weekend in the Northeast and in the Great Lakes. We went from really warm Saturday to we had the snow on Sunday. We had a couple accidents. We had some problems in Michigan, especially with some snow that came down around Detroit and through southern Michigan. That's where the roads got very slippery in a hurry. It wasn't a lot of snow, but it was just enough to cause a pretty big backup. And if you've ever been in the snow and stuck on roads like this, that's not a fun scenario for anyone. So today, it's a little bit better. The only snowy areas are really from Boston down to the Cape. That's where we do still have a little bit of light snow coming down. That's the blue on the map. There's also some flurries out there in Maryland and near Pittsburgh. But the bigger story is just the cold. It's just, there's not many mornings left like this, thankfully. As we go through February, we really start to warm things up. But look at International Falls and Fargo. Wind chill is -25. Northern Vermont and northern Maine, -12, -17. New York's at 5, Pittsburgh 1, Chicago 6. So this is a true Arctic air mass. All the warmth that's been in the west, though, is going to start heading east, and that's going to warm everybody up. So L.A. 75 today, Oklahoma City 68 degrees. And as I mentioned, as we head towards tomorrow, that warm air starts to spread to the east, and eventually it'll make it to the East Coast by the end of this week. So for today, guys, this one's for you. Pick your favorite Valentine's Day city on here. One of my favorites, Sweetheart City, Wisconsin is a good one. Darling, Arizona. I mean, you can pick any of these for your Valentine.
Sweetheart, Wisconsin. That's pretty cute. I got to say, I was very jealous, Bill Cairns, of watching The Rock last night with his short sleeves on while we were sitting
his
here.
Short sleeves, that must have been a custom shirt, by the way.
Oh, for sure.
It was like
with those biceps?
Away by that, yeah.
So someone tweeted that he seemed bigger than the players with pads on.
Yes, it was crazy.
He is just so huge.
Great outfit, though. Great outfit. Love a color block.
Popping. It was like 3D biceps.
Yes. Exactly. I feel like you could hang on one of them.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you, Bill. Good to see you.
Thanks, Bill. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Hi there. Welcome back. We are so excited to say that we are about to have someone on the show who has just made history, becoming the first Black woman to win a gold medal in speed skating for the USA. We are very lucky that Erin Jackson joins us now this morning to talk through her win after that's just happened. Erin, I believe we've got you. There we go. Congratulations and welcome to the show. I think I see a medal hanging around your neck. Can you show it to us? And how are you feeling? Yay.
How heavy is that thing?
Feeling great. It's pretty heavy. I think I just almost dropped it.
Has it sunk in yet?
Yeah, I think as I started hearing the announcers just announce the medals, I don't know, it was emotional.
Oh, I bet.
That is so exciting, Erin. Listen, you are the first Black woman to win an individual speed skating medal at the Olympics. How does it feel to make history in so many ways?
Yeah, it feels great. I just always try to be a good example whenever I can. And yeah, hopefully this is a good example for someone to see. Maybe hopefully inspire someone to get out there and maybe get some more people in these winter sports.
Oh, I love that. I love whenever we hear any of you Olympians talk about that, about getting more people into these sports, because I think it matters so much. I mean, people seeing someone who looks like them. And, yeah. Something else that was inspiring, by the way, and talk about a great example. One of the great displays of sportsmanship that we always love to see come out of the Olympics was when your teammate, Brittany Bowe, gave up her spot so you can compete. But then Team USA got an extra spot and she ended up back in the games. What did her decision mean to you? I mean, when you first heard that, what did you think? What did you say to her? And then what was it like competing against her after that?
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. She's just a really selfless teammate, just a really great person, a great friend. It's hard to imagine someone doing something like that for you, you know? So yeah, I was really grateful. Yeah, we shared a lot of emotional hugs. Yeah, after she for me, and just for it to come back around and for the USA to pick up another spot in that distance so that she could compete as well. It was just, you know, icing on the cake, just full circle there.
Erin, I feel like your trajectory is so incredible, so quick, right? You started out in inline skating. You switched to the ice literally in 2017, made it to the Olympics in 2018. I mean, who does that? Within 1 year, you became an Olympian, now the number one ranked speed skater in the world, right? So basically superwoman.
I mean, it's amazing.
How did you transition so quickly?
I don't know. I mean, I think it had a lot to do with my coaching, you know, and the program out in Salt Lake City. I've got Coach Ryan Chimabukuro, and then I have just my amazing teammates. We're just out pushing each other every day, and I know that I wouldn't be here without them.
And Erin, quickly before we let you go, we have to ask, what's next? And we're asking you what maybe other people are this morning. Do you have your sights on 2026?
Oh, of course, yeah. Definitely looking at another Olympic cycle. I can't see myself stopping now.
Take a break first, though. Take a rest, a nap, maybe.
Lucky for us, though, that we'll get a massage. Erin, thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Congratulations.
Congrats.
Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
Exciting.
All right, the teenage Russian figure skater at the center of doping questions is going to be able to carry on competing in the Olympics. Some breaking news this morning.
Yeah, there's really actually two big pieces of news here. So first, an international body called the Court of Arbitration for Sport came to that decision that Kamila Valieva can continue to compete after it was reported that she had tested positive for a banned substance before the games. And that ruling comes just a day before the women's short program, where Valieva is favored to win gold. But here's the other piece of big news. In response to the court deciding she can compete, the International Olympic Committee decided that because the doping case is still unresolved, there will be no medal ceremonies at all with this athlete on the podium. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson on this developing story and all the other headlines out of Beijing this morning. Hey, Steve. So I think a really important thing for viewers to remember here is that Kamila Valieva is part of the group slated for gold in the team event that we already saw. USA slated for silver. So are all these other athletes, they just don't get a medal ceremony? What's the reaction been like to that? And then also just tell us about this ruling that she actually can compete here.
Well, in order to sort of set the stakes, I think it's important to remember how much of a phenom Valieva is. I mean, she is considered not only to win, you know, the gold that she already won, but as you mentioned, further along in the event, and then she probably has enough fuel to win several more Olympics. She won her event by about a country mile. She's the first woman to ever land a quad at the Olympics, and she had so much more to go. Meanwhile, again, you know, starting back before that ruling, she did test positive for a so-called illegal substance. Apparently, it was a heart medication, which is proven to enhance performance by way of enhancing stamina. That positive test came about Christmas. It was ruled by a Russian committee, essentially, that she should be suspended off that ruling. But then that suspension was appealed, and she was allowed to compete at the Olympics. The internal organization, that the arbitrator that was sort of figuring out whether or not she could continue, after about 6 hours of deliberations last night, decided that she still could continue. But as you mentioned, no medals whatsoever. So yeah, we've heard from Johnny Weir, we've heard from Tara Lipinski, we've heard from the United States Olympic Committee. Nobody likes this. They're considering this a stain on the sport. But the arbitrator that did this said that she's basically a protected person because she's under the age of 16. So certain protections just kind of automatically kick in here, but still obviously a very controversial decision, and especially one that'll be paid attention to moving forward here.
Hey Steve, it's Yasmin. Let's talk about also this new event debuting here at the Olympics, and a major accomplishment as well. I got to say, when I first heard about the monobob, I thought it was a haircut, but turns out it's not. It's a new sport, a major event for the. I was like, give me a monobob. What's my hair? Give me a monobob. A huge sport, a big event for the American women, especially taking home gold and silver. Elena Myers-Taylor, actually, who won silver, became the oldest American woman to medal at the Winter Olympics. By the way, she's not that old.
Yeah, really.
Talk about that accomplishment and how it was almost derailed.
Yasmin, don't make me laugh so hard that I cry because the tears will freeze on my face. Yeah, Alana Meyer-Taylor, I mean, look, if you guys remember, she was the one that we saw in her hotel room because she tested positive for COVID as soon as she got to Beijing, which was heartbreaking and has been for so many athletes. It essentially just ruins their Olympic dreams. And we saw her having to basically work out in her room and, eat meals that didn't look too great. And she's doing all this while all the expectations were on her. She gets through that, and then, obviously she wins the silver, along with Callie Humphreys, who wins the gold. And these two were just leagues better than I think the rest of the competition. And part of the reason is because of the monobob. It's a completely new event. It is, instead of a whole coordinated team pushing that thing down the ice, it's just one woman. So I think a few factors were at play here. One you already mentioned, which is sort of the veterancy of both of these athletes. Both of them have extreme experience and then multiple medals. And then two, upper body strength. I think we saw that really on display here. They were able to push through, keep their line solid, win gold and silver for Team USA. Big win.
All right. So much news there. Steve Patterson, go warm up. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Now, opening statements could begin as early as today in the federal hate crimes trial of the three men convicted of killing Ahmaud Arbery. Gregory McMichael, his son Travis McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan are charged with hate crimes and attempted kidnapping. The Department of Justice has alleged that the men confronted Arbery because of his race. The three men have pleaded not guilty. Last year, the men were convicted on state charges for the 2020 murder of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia, and they each received a life sentence. NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander has been following this case and joins us now from Atlanta. Hey, Blaine, good morning. So what's the latest on the jury selection process? What's that been like so far?
Well, Savannah, good morning to you. This is officially day 6 of the jury selection process, and the judge has said that she expects to officially seat that jury today. But we know that it really has been an extensive process, and they've cast a very wide net. So consider this. It's taking place down in South Georgia. That's Brunswick, Georgia. But more than 43 counties and more than 1,000 people received summons for this. So we're talking about people who had to drive for potential jury duty from more than 4 hours away. That really casts a wide net, and it also decreases the likelihood that you'll have people who are familiar with either the defendants or the attorneys on either side in this case. But what's different about this, of course, Savannah, is that unlike what we saw in the state trial, the murder trial, race is really taking the forefront here. So a number of the questions from the judge over the past week actually spoke to that. She spent a week asking jurors, one, whether they were familiar with the defendants, but two, whether they had any sort of prior knowledge about the case, if they had watched the first trial, and what their views on race was, what racism looked like to them. So we saw a couple of instances where there were some people who said because of the role that race plays in this, they didn't think that they could be impartial. So a lot of very frank conversations. I think the other thing that's notable is that the makeup of this jury is going to be under a lot more scrutiny than what we saw before, Savannah.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I mean, Blaine, you're talking about it right here, that this is because of race. In this trial, prosecutors have to prove that the men targeted Arbery because he was black. What kind of evidence do they have to prove that to a jury? And what are the attorneys for the McMichaels and Bryan saying about this in response? What's their defense going to look like?
Well, one thing that that the prosecution has made clear is that they're going to bring forward they want to bring forward text message. They want to bring forward social media posts, Facebook posts, things that they say show that the three defendants had racial animus, that they were prejudiced against African Americans. And really what they're trying to prove is that they made an assumption about Ahmaud Arbery that day, the day that they saw him running, that they made an assumption that he was committing crimes in the neighborhood. And ultimately, that's what led them to follow him and ultimately led to his death. So those are some things that we are certainly going to see. Again, very different from what we saw in the state trial. That wasn't introduced. That wasn't a conversation at all. For the defense, though, it's of course going to be the burden of saying, you know what, if there are those things that are introduced, what does that have to do with that specific day? Savannah.
Blaine Alexander will be watching for this and checking back in with you. Thank you so much.
All right, let's look at what's making news around the world this morning.
Ali Arouzi is with us from Tehran. Hey, Ali, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, has just tested positive for COVID-19 days after her husband, Prince Charles, contracted the virus. Camilla, who's 74 years old, got the virus despite being triple vaccinated. Clarence House says she'll continue to follow government guidelines. Camilla has caught the virus for the first time after Charles contracted it for a second time. She carried out engagements last Thursday, the day her husband tested positive. The couple are now self-isolating. Extreme weather and climate change is altering the planet as we look on. Spain and Portugal have been experiencing an extremely dry winter. In central Portugal, a sustained drought has revealed the ruins of a village that was totally submerged underwater when a large reservoir was created 70 years ago. The lack of rain in Spain has dredged up the skeleton of the old village of Arcedo, submerged 3 decades ago when a hydropower dam flooded the valley. Local residents remember the whole area being covered in vineyards and orange trees. Now they say that all they see is a cracked yellow bed of the reservoir with the carcass of a rusted car sitting on it. And finally, Barry Manilow has been deployed to break COVID protesters in New Zealand. Well, his music anyway. After a convoy of truck drivers drove to Parliament, the Speaker authorised the use of a sound system to blast out vaccine messages, some vintage Barry Manilow, and the highly annoying 90s hit, The Macarena, on a repeat loop. The move evidently borrowed from the Marines playbook in 1989 when they broke Panamanian Director General Noriega with heavy metal being played on a loop when he'd holed himself up in the Vatican Embassy in Panama City. And those are your headlines, and the question is, what music would drive you to despair?
I have to say, my
Fighting
friend,
words there. Annoying.
I rather like the Macarena when it comes on. I throw it out. Right? I still know those moves. Try to teach
I was going to say the Macarena would drive me crazy.
Yeah, we gathered that.
You and I should then not be at a dance together, Ali Arouzi. Thank you for those headlines. We appreciate it, my friend.
Thanks, Ali.
All right, everybody. So if you're looking for a last-minute Valentine's Day gift for that special someone, the Bronx Zoo has a solution for you. Name a roach after your Valentine. Why not? The program may sound more fit for a scorned lover, but the folks at the zoo say it is a gift designed to last. After all, chocolate and flowers are fleeting, but cockroaches, by the way, are forever. For $15, you can name one of the zoo's Madagascar hissing cockroaches and receive a certificate memorializing the name. Other roach products like socks, beanies, and a virtual cockroach meet and greet have already sold out for this year. They've sold out, Savannah. They've sold out.
Okay, we were just talking about how we both need gifts. Honestly,
that's what I'm doing.
I love something bizarre like that. I might do it.
Babe, got you a cockroach.
Alex would flip out.
Let's go visit your cockroach.
You're so bizarre and this is disgusting, but it's hysterical. All right, thanks, Yasmin. Now, Valentine's Day has traditionally been about couples celebrating their love, which can make it a tough time for people who are single or dealing with a breakup or divorce. Well, some new businesses are rewriting those notions and helping all people feel the love, even creating things like divorce registries. Take a look.
I get at least 1 to 2 women a day who message me privately and ask how to get out of a bad marriage.
Olivia and her sister Jenny launched Fresh Starts Registry in October 2021.
Divorce is a gift. It is a gift for both people to start again, to live a life that they deserve.
Having gone through long-term breakups themselves, Olivia and Jenny said they wanted to provide a one-stop shop to start again.
We have our product bundles based on budget, based on room. You can go, we vetted the products, we've read the reviews. You can send it to your family and friends. We give you a script to do that.
In addition to products, they offer access to different experts, their hype team, as they call it. Think divorce lawyers, real estate agents, fitness teachers, nutritionists, mortgage lenders, life coaches, and therapists.
It's free to access the resource, the experts, the bundles, the registry element. All of that is completely free for our users.
The site also shares tips on communicating, whether you're going through a divorce or wanting to help someone who is.
It's okay to say I'm proud of you for making a life decision. You don't need to say I'm sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about.
We think every decision that you make should be celebrated.
For some, that includes celebrating being single, like Serena Kerrigan, who dubs herself the queen of being single. She told us she's thrilled to be part of the Registry for Me campaign.
To make a registry for everyone, but especially for singles, to put gifts that they might want. I think that's really important to just celebrate all kinds of milestones.
Liquor brand Absolute Vodka partnered with gift exchange platform Elfster this Valentine's season to offer this registry as a place where men and women can create their own wish list or create gift exchanges with their friends. Serena says it's especially important for women to celebrate themselves.
You need to remove the taboo and the shame away from divorce, or I can't even believe being single is even a taboo.
Though these new kinds of registries are not exclusive to anyone, women could benefit more from them. A 2018 report in the National Library of Medicine says women face risk factors after divorce, including restricted earning capacities, insufficient child maintenance, disproportionate loss of income, and human capital deficits.
I think these sites are so cool because they're really providing not only this interesting way of building your life back together, but they're also giving out all these great financial resources that are really helping people.
Kristen's client base is largely women, and she says these non-traditional registries are another way to empower them to take control of their financial futures.
It's always been the men create and control the predominant amount of wealth, and they really think that that's going to flip by 2030.
In 2020, women controlled $10.9 trillion in financial assets owned by baby boomers. But by 2030, they're expected to control almost $30 trillion, according to a 2020 report by financial firm McKinsey & Company.
I think there's a lot of value, and I can't underestimate the resources that these types of services are providing.
Olivia and Jenny echo that support. They say everyone deserves help to create a positive space to build or rebuild their life.
We're celebrating people. We're celebrating change, because change is good.
All right, everybody. So the Super Bowl between the Rams and the Bengals came down to the wire, giving fans an exciting finale to one of the best playoff series in recent memory.
But as always, the halftime show had a lot of people talking to, and this year's was huge. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick Lamar, and Mary J. Blige stole the spotlight and brought some serious throwbacks for Gen X and millennials alike. Let's bring in NBC News youth and internet culture reporter Callan Rosenblatt for more on the viral moments of this year's Super Bowl. Hey, Callan. So, of course, let's start with that halftime show. It's already being dubbed one of the greatest of all time. What made it just so special?
I mean, flat out, it was just an amazing performance. But I think something that's really important to note is nostalgia is very in right now. Yeah. The 90s, early 2000s, that's what's in fashion right now. And so for millennials like myself, for Gen Xers, this was like throwing back to our high school and middle school dances. It was amazing. Exactly. And then for younger people, they're really into this era too. So I think it had a little bit of something for everyone, and that just made it a hands down success.
I knew every single
same
word.
The dances is such a good point.
Everything. Eminem also at one point, Callan, took a knee, taking a page out of the Kaepernick book. There was a lot of talk, of course, and has been about a lack of diversity in the NFL, especially when it comes to the coaching staff. Yeah. How else did we see this controversy playing out during the Super Bowl?
Well, this has been a huge topic of conversation, as you mentioned, among the coaching staff, among how the NFL uses Black bodies to profit. We saw Eminem taking that knee, which reportedly the NFL asked him not to do. There's also a line that the NFL reportedly asked Dr. Dre not to say about not getting along with police officers. He said the line anyway. We saw a lot of defiance in the face of the NFL in regards to these issues around Black body, Black labor, Black coaching staff, and equality. And, I think people were really thrilled to see Black excellence really on display during this halftime show. But they were also kind of conflicted because of these controversies around the NFL. And I think this was a cry for the NFL to do better when it comes to Black representation and how they treat Black labor.
And Callan, quickly before we let you go, let's talk about before the game even started, the star power there.
Oh, absolutely. We had Janae Aiko, who sang America the Beautiful. Then we had Mickey Guyton, who sang the national anthem. And then the stands were loaded with celebrities. This was in Los Angeles. We had Kanye West and his kids who have been in the news a lot. We had Ben and Jennifer. It was just Kendall Jenner. Everyone was in the stands. Anyone was there. It was a star-studded night and so much fun to watch.
And once again, we got The Rock in clearly a custom T-shirt. All right, Callan Rosenblatt, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thank you, Callan.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, it's time for our CNBC Money Minute, the biggest financial headlines of the day and why they matter to you.
Bertha Coombs is with us. Hi, Bertha. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, ladies. So prices at the pump are moving higher. I won't have to tell you that if you drive. The average price of gas jumping 15 cents over the past 3 weeks to $3.55 a gallon. Analysts say the increase follows the rise in the cost of crude oil, which has been moving higher on those tensions between Russia and the Ukraine. Crude accounts for about 60% of the average retail cost of gas. And the U.S. has halted the imports of Mexican avocados after an American safety inspector in Mexico received a threat. The move coming on the eve of the Super Bowl, the biggest sales day of the year for Mexican avocado growers, but it didn't affect game day consumption as those avocados had already shipped. Because the U.S. also grows avocados, inspectors work in Mexico to ensure that experts don't carry diseases that could hurt U.S. crops. And a word of warning if you're visiting the metaverse. Insurance firm Aviva says it saw a 31% increase in claims involving VR headsets last year. The average claim for VR-related damages was about $880. Most of those incidents involved cracked TV screens. Aviva says it's already processed a number of claims so far this year. Coincidentally, Meta's Oculus topped the charts in the Apple App Store on Christmas Day, so that's a lot more clients that will probably be filing them if they're as clumsy as I am.
Cracked TV screens, huh?
If only you knew what was happening in those TV rooms at that time.
All right, Bertha,
thank you so much. All right, this Black History Month, we want to take you inside the studio of one of fashion's present-day icons.
Yeah, you may have seen James Fleming's boundary-breaking designs on celebrities like Lil Nas X and Billie Eilish, and we've got a look at how he brings those designs to life. NBC's Maya Eaglin has more on the gender-bending artist and his influence on the fashion world.
This is our little slip up, which is supposed to be a little mixture of masculine and feminine identities.
James Fleming is redesigning what it means to be a style icon.
There is a element of nudity that plays into fashion.
Tearing through dated practices to create a brand fit for the modern consumer.
Gender just doesn't matter when it comes to clothes. I don't think it ever really should.
And with that inclusivity comes a whole lot of creativity.
Business in the front, party in the back.
Love that. Where body positivity meets sustainability. You'll find the founder of this genderless clothing line.
These were a bunch of tank tops that I bought from the Goodwill.
In the studio, this young artist's intentions are as thoughtful as his designs, using his love language of physical touch as inspiration.
I use materials or use little construction things that kind of make you feel like you're being touched or just like hugged. Like I use ribs that really hug your body, or like little things that you can just like feel the presence of clothes or a touch.
The LA-based queer and Black designer is blazing a new runway for himself. Following the loss of fashion icons Virgil Abloh and Andre Leon Talley, Fleming is continuing their legacy and creating a space that wasn't always accessible. 1 in 6 members of Gen Z identify as something other than heterosexual, and Fleming isn't going to leave them behind.
It was really important for me to make like a safe space of just like genderless or non-binary clothing that very much just speaks to your identity, and it gives room for anyone to feel comfortable to explore that, whether gay, straight, non-binary, black, white, brown, whatever, it doesn't matter, that it's like you can find something that fits into this world that you can express yourself in, and you don't have to. I mean, the fashion world is so kind of can box out so many people. And yeah, I just wanted to create a world that was welcoming to any and all kinds.
Already designing for stars like Lil Nas X on the cover of Time, Billie Eilish, and Lizzo. It's no secret that Flemons is one of the hottest young designers in the business. But he hasn't always gotten this much attention, even though he's been designing clothes since he was a kid.
I've done some pretty recognizable things that had a pretty big spotlight on it that should have, I feel, taken me to the successes that 2020 did.
After the murder of George Floyd, Flemons noticed a sudden interest in his work.
All the lists I was on of Black designers, and it was a weird thing to kind of grapple because it was so much just all attention out of nowhere that was at first it was really nice, and then it got to feel a little crazy and a little performative. And but it did introduce me to a lot more audiences.
And while the attention has been good for business, there's still a lot of work to be done. Flemons points out that already disadvantaged Black designers have to fight even harder to earn a spot on the pages of glossy fashion magazines.
How many more 5-page editorials do we need about Gucci or Louis Vuitton or these luxury brands that they have the capital, they have all of the eyes on them, they have a consistent heartbeat, and there's so many struggling brands out there who could really propel from that kind of exposure.
While the world watches, Flemons prepares for his next launch, reimagining some of his childhood designs from the 2000s just in time for the Y2K resurgence in today's street style.
It's been really interesting, and it feels like the perfect timing to just go back and have a conversation with
your younger self.
Exactly. Hopefully I can make him proud.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.